This is Mrs. Miller, your teacher at ELA Academy. Welcome to Part 4 of the Essay Basics series. In Parts 1 through 3, we looked at the different essay modes, how to structure your essay, and how to come up with ideas. In this video, we'll look at the structure of a body paragraph, along with the special features we'll usually see in each mode. This is sort of a note-taking video, so if you'd like a little help with that, click on the link to my blog post in the video description below and download a set of guided Cornell notes at elaacademy.us. The next 4 videos will demonstrate writing a body paragraph in each of the 4 modes. In many ways, a body paragraph is like a short answer response. Check out my SAQ video series for more information. In an SAQ, the first thing you need is to answer the question. It's the main idea of your response, and everything else will help to prove that answer. Likewise, in a body paragraph, you need a topic sentence, the main idea of the paragraph. Now to support that main idea. In an SAQ, you need to provide evidence, which usually takes the form of quotations or summarized material from the reading selection. You need something similar in a body paragraph. Jane Schaefer calls these concrete details. It can still be quotations or summary from a text you read, maybe from research, but if you aren't using any outside sources, it might include objective descriptions or facts. So if you're writing a narrative, for example, the concrete details might include a character's actions or dialogue, or a description of the setting. Last, in an SAQ, you need explanation, which is where you make inferences and provide your interpretation of the evidence and how it supports your answer. Similarly, a body paragraph needs commentary, your interpretation of the concrete details, an explanation of their significance. This is very abstract right now, but in the demonstration videos, we'll look at topic sentences, concrete details, and commentary in actual body paragraphs. Now let's look at the different modes, each of which has some extra things you should try to include. Let's look at the narrative mode first. The Purdue Online Writing Lab reminds us that a narrative needs certain components: an intro, some background or context, plot, stuff that happens, setting, a description of the time and place, characters, their personalities, a climax, where the main conflict peaks and we learn who wins or loses or whatever, and a conclusion, where all the loose ends are wrapped up, we see what lessons are learned, and characters might be changed by what happened in the story. So we need to make sure that any narrative we write contains all of these elements. Descriptive writing is pretty straightforward. You're painting a picture for your reader. Purdue reminds us to use vivid descriptions of things we can experience with our senses, what we can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. If you're describing an object, you might also include an explanation of what it's for and how it works. And if you're describing a person, you might include information on his or her personality. In the expository mode, you rely on evidence and explanation. Evidence might include facts, not your opinion, but objective, verifiable fact. Logical reasoning, where you look at the facts and make inferences, connections, or predictions. Statistics, like 4 out of 5 dentists recommend this toothpaste. And anecdotes, brief stories that illustrate a point. Now, since I've brought up the issue of fact versus opinion, which will also be something we're concerned with in the argumentative mode, let's clear up a common misperception. When we're just talking with other people, we tend to say something like, "That's a fact," to mean, "That's true, that's something I agree with." So if my friend said, "Pizza is the best party food," I might respond, "That's a fact." But what I really mean is that it's an opinion that I agree with, that I think is true. But that's not the way we're using it when we talk about fact versus opinion in your writing. A fact is a statement that can be proven or disproven. That doesn't sound right, does it? But it should make more sense in a minute. An opinion cannot be proven or disproven. You might say, "Hold on a minute, I have lots of opinions and I can prove all of them." No, you can't actually prove your opinions. What you're actually doing is supporting them. And yes, you might support them with very compelling facts, but the opinion itself cannot be proven. So let's look at a few examples. Dogs are generally larger than cats. Can we prove or disprove this statement? Yes. We could round up every dog and cat in your hometown and measure them to find out. Even the fact that somebody's Maine Coon is bigger than somebody else's Chihuahua doesn't disprove this fact because it says generally, not always. Now let's look at an opinion. Cats are better pets than dogs. Now, I might tell my friend that's a fact, but somebody else might disagree with me and say that dogs are better pets. You can't prove it either way. You can bring up good and bad points of cats and dogs, but which one is better depends on how you feel about those good and bad points. For example, I think cleaning a litter box is a small price to pay for my cute, dignified little companion, but somebody else might be totally grossed out by it and say it's a deal breaker. They'd say it's better that the dogs go do their business in the backyard. Let's look at a couple more examples. Blue is a color. You can prove that by looking up the word blue in a dictionary. How about blue is the prettiest color? Again, some people will disagree with that, and you can't prove which one is prettier. How about this one? 1 inch equals 1 meter. Hold on, that's false. I can look that up and prove that an inch is much smaller than a meter. This is what makes some people really mad. We're still calling it a fact. It's just an incorrect one. Just because it's incorrect doesn't make it an opinion. Think about what it would mean if you said that. That would imply that all your opinions are false because they aren't facts. So, like it says at the top, don't mix up fact versus opinion with true versus false. They're totally different things. So, how is this relevant to your essay? You need to understand the difference between fact and opinion so that when you're trying to explain yourself or argue your opinion, you can be sure not to rely entirely on opinions. Opinions are okay, but your reader might disagree with you, in which case you need some facts to help support what you're saying. If your facts are compelling enough, you might persuade someone to change his or her opinion. Speaking of persuading somebody, let's look at the argumentative mode. An argument will probably contain everything your expository writing has, which means that sometimes people have a hard time telling the difference between the two. Just remember that in expository, you're explaining something. In argument, you're debating something controversial and trying to persuade the reader to agree with you. That means you want your opinion to sound as strong as possible. Here are some tips from Roane State Community College to help you do that. I know that I just finished lecturing you on the difference between fact and opinion, but if you say things like, I believe and I feel, you'll make your opinion sound weaker. Instead, state your opinions strongly, as though they are facts. It might trick your reader into thinking they are. Don't try to act like you're an expert on the subject you're talking about, unless, of course, you really are an expert. Instead, quote some experts who agree with you. It might still be an opinion, but it's more compelling when it comes from a well-respected authority rather than just some random student. Sorry. Don't rely solely on moral or religious claims. This is one of the reasons we talked about fact versus opinion. Just because it's your opinion doesn't make it wrong or right, but if your reader doesn't share your opinion, they might dismiss your entire argument. So go ahead and use your opinions and beliefs if you wish, but also provide facts. The next one is sometimes hard to get the hang of. Don't assume your reader will agree with you about anything. You can't just throw out a statement like, well, obviously cats are better pets than dogs, so let's look at... No, you need to provide reasons for any opinion you want the reader to buy into. Now, sometimes when people argue, they will attack those who disagree with them. We see it in politics all the time. I won't lie, these personal attacks do tend to create a powerful impression, but you really shouldn't do it in your writing. Somebody might suspect you're using personal attacks because you don't really have good reasons to support your side. So instead of attacking the person, just explain why their claims are wrong. So let's recap what we've covered in this lesson. We're looking at how to write strong body paragraphs by making sure we've got all the right stuff in them. First, we looked at the general structure of a body paragraph. It needs a topic sentence, the main idea, concrete details, facts and objective descriptions, and commentary, your thoughts, opinions, and explanations. But we also looked at other things you'll want to include depending on which mode you're writing in. Now, some of you might be sitting there right now thinking, wow, this is too much stuff to remember. First of all, you have your notes, right? Second, instead of thinking of all this as a bunch of requirements to check off your list, I'd like you to think of it as things to give you ideas of what to write about. When I demonstrate writing these paragraphs in the next 4 videos, I think you'll see that it isn't very scary or overwhelming at all. Also keep in mind that we're talking about writing a single paragraph in a single mode. Remember in part 1 that we talked about how an essay can have more than one mode in it? That's why we've covered all of it in this one video, because you might be writing an argumentative essay, but decide to throw in a little narrative or description to spice up your argument and make it more powerful. I hope this video has helped you to understand what kinds of things can go in your body paragraphs, but don't miss the next 4 videos. That's where you'll see all this theory stuff go into actual paragraphs, and then it'll make a lot more sense. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest so that you'll be the first to know when I've posted new stuff. And as always, you can find supplementary materials for each and every video on my blog at elaacademy.us. This is ELA Academy.